Hi there, Robin Blackburn McBride here, transformational life coach. This is the third video in a series called Clarity, Confidence, Results. And today I'm going to be focusing on results. Specifically, I'm going to be making a key distinction when it comes to what we think of as successful results. And I'm also going to be sharing an Irish story with you. So I want to begin by simply saying success begets success. If you are looking for a tried and true technique for achieving success, achieving results that light you up, start to give yourself wins on a daily basis. This is something that I often coach people to do. I practice this myself, and we have all seen this. We've seen the effect of a successful experience on, for example, a young person. When we watch a little child learning to ride a bike, that first time they go out and they actually turn the wheels for 5, 10, 15, 20 seconds, that's huge. The confidence goes way up. And what happens? Well, what happens is they accelerate their success. They, the next time they go out, they're able to stay upright for longer, faster. Okay, so it's like that for all of us, whatever it is that we're applying ourselves to. If it's difficult initially, once we start to practice and break through and achieve success, we feel good. There is a chemical produced in the body called dopamine, and it's a neurotransmitter. It's actually known as the success drug. There's a thought leader whose work I really like. His name is Professor Ian Robertson, and he has written a book called The Winner Effect. I highly recommend you read that book if you are curious about this topic and you would like to continue to experiment with you, bringing more and more results that light you up into the world. Really, really great book. I remember studying with one of my yoga teachers. He was a man in his mid-90s, actually. And I remember very clearly he said to those of us in his class, your body is a pharmacy. You have the potential, the capability of producing any feel-good drug you would like, and it's actually within your body's capability to do that. So dopamine is one of those. But what I want to look at before I get into the distinction is I want to look at what happens when you are achieving results that are impressive. They're definitely measurable. They're results that other people look at and think are great. What happens when you don't feel anything at all achieving those results? Or worse, what happens when the expression that comes to mind is jumping through hoops? Is there a domain in your life where you feel that in fact you are succeeding, but it's coming at a cost? And the cost may be energy drain, it may be frustration, it may be anguish, frankly. And anxiety is up in our culture. It may be that it's starting to feel like jumping through those hoops just isn't sustainable anymore. And this is where I want to make the distinction when it comes to success. There is the kind of success that is impressive, but it's actually hollow. And in fact, it brings to mind an old expression, to win the battle but lose the war. And a related term is Pyrrhic victory. Do you remember that from high school? I remember one of my favorite high school teachers. His name was Mr. Baker. And I remember being a teenager in his class and learning about King Pyrrhus of Epeira during the times of the Roman Empire, and how this king sent his army out, and their mandate was to succeed at all costs. Well, in fact, that's what they did. They succeeded at all costs. It was a devastating success. So clearly you and I are not after achieving that kind of success because it takes such a toll. So any kind of success that feels contractive, that feels like something really valuable and beautiful has been lost as a result of that so-called success. We want to pay attention to those moments in our lives and really feel into what is it we would love. And I'll come back to that. Let's just focus for a moment on what I will simply call true success. True success feels great. It feels expansive when we achieve something that we truly feel pumped about and give ourselves a win for. We know that we are aligned. So alignment is very much at the heart of this talk today. And that is what I specialize in. I specialize in helping people to align their vision, goals, and results with their true sense of purpose, their true sense of calling. So when we have successes that line up with the reasons why we really feel that we're here on earth in the first place, that is the most awesome thing in the world, and that is what I'm about helping you to do. So let me go right to a book. And I just paused there because I was going to jump into the Irish story, but I want to make sure that I give you this book first. We know that as a species, we are growing and evolving. We are changing. We are changing when it comes to our values, and we're also changing when it comes to what motivates us. Now, Daniel Pink has written a really wonderful book called Drive. And the subtitle of the book is The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. The wonderful thing about this work is that Pink conducted a lot of research and found that increasingly in our world today, people are less and less inclined to be motivated by external rewards and more likely to be motivated by the intrinsic value of a task. And what that means, simply put, is that you and I want our lives to be meaningful. You don't want to be going and logging time at a job or in a relationship where it just doesn't feel meaningful anymore. You know, just for a moment, I want to present a couple of case studies. A couple of people who I heard about recently, not anybody who I've worked with or even who I know personally, but both of these people exemplified something that is a caution for all of us. You know, they're both women. One of the women, in her heart of hearts, always wanted to go into the fashion world. She wanted to be a designer. And yet she was very strongly influenced by people in her life growing up to go into a job that would earn a lot of money. You know, that was what the family was very much conditioning her to do. And so she did go out and became a financial analyst. In another scenario, a young woman, not very scientifically inclined. It just wasn't her passion. She was capable, but it wasn't her passion. Came from a family where a lot of pressure was being exerted on her to go into medicine. And so even though she was turned down by a number of schools, she did end up going out and finding a school that would take her, and she earned her medical degree and she set up her practice. In both of those cases, there were damaging effects. In fact, in one case, and I won't go into the details, fatality. When we are frustrated, when we are achieving and it doesn't feel meaningful, it doesn't feel aligned, that energy has to go somewhere. That energy of, it could be frustration, it could be anger. You know, usually there is a layer of anger there, and underneath all of it is always fear, fear-based thinking, fear-based impulses. When we are operating from a fear-based energy, it has to symptomize. So either it symptomizes as you or me showing up and being toxic in our behavior and you know, having this undercurrent of misery in our life and be getting more results that mirror that kind of energy, or it symptomizes physically in the body. So that actually is a reason why a lot of people come into coach. because they know that doing what they've been doing in a certain domain, it's not sustainable, and they're worried about their stress levels. They're worried about where this might be going in their health domain. It doesn't just happen in the vocation domain of life. It happens in relationships. People who are continuing to stay in relationships that are not life-affirming, not expansive, but in fact generating very contractive feelings. That energy has to go somewhere. So if that's you in any domain of your life, you just simply want to pay attention to that, and you want to know that you have the power to turn the ship. So, okay, now I'm going to get to the old Irish story. This comes from the Ulster story cycle. So we're going back into Ulster mythology. Ulster is an area in present-day Ireland and Northern Ireland, and it has quite a colorful, beautiful mythology to it, just as all cultures do on the planet. And I happen to have an affinity for Irish stories. In fact, I have a novel coming out in October of 2018. And it is a story of a boy who comes from Ireland to Toronto in the late 19th century. I won't tell you any more about that because it's not really the point here today. But I just want to say, when I researched that novel, I came across such beautiful, beautiful stories. And one of the stories comes from a collection called The Toyn. And I have a translation here by Thomas Kinsella. And they're very lively stories, wonderful mythic stories. And I'm sure you remember studying myths and legends when you were a little kid. Well, this one has that wonderful mythic energy to it. And it's the story of Cruniac. Now, Cruniac is a chieftain. He's a successful man. He's a prosperous man, a provider, an action taker. He's a farmer. He's a leader in his community. And he's also a father. He's raising sons, but he's a widower. And in the relationship domain, he feels empty. You know, he feels sad. His house is a lonely house. And one night there is a raging storm. And during this storm, Cruniac awakens to find a beautiful woman. She's a very mysterious woman, and she's outside, and her hair is flying around in the wind. She's got this very, very long hair. He goes and he opens the door and he lets her in. He discovers all kinds of things about this woman, mysterious things like she won't give him her name. And also she has this amazing ability to run faster than any horse. Well, she moves right in. She goes to bed with him. She starts taking care of his home. She takes care of his children. She takes care of him. And they move into a beautiful, harmonious stretch of life together. One day, Cruniac receives an invitation, and it's an invitation that has been sent with the king's awareness. It's an invitation to a feast. Cruniac does not want to go because his wife is in the final stages of pregnancy. But he feels that he must go to satisfy the king. He's very worried about how he's going to be perceived. And so due to this fear and wanting to impress the king, he brings his wife and they go off all the way to the feast. And at the feast, his wife says to him, "Whatever you do, don't be boastful and be very careful about what you say." And he promises her, you know, of course, I'll be careful about what I say. So off they go. Well, what happens at the feast is people get caught up in the atmosphere of revelry. There are games. There's a chariot race, and the king's chariot wins the race, and everybody's cheering. And the crowd says, you know, he can hear Cruniac can hear people muttering and cheering. The king's horses are the fastest horses on the earth. The king has the fastest horses. And caught up in that energy, he blurts out, "My wife can run faster than the king's horses." Well, at that, the king is just absolutely shocked. He's horrified. There's this silence that comes over the crowd. And the king says, you have to show me on pain of death. How dare you say that? You show me. Well, of course, Kruniak and his wife are horrified. Here she is in her 9th month of pregnancy, and she begs everybody present, don't make me do this. I will do it, but after I've given birth. In fact, at one point, she turns to the Red Branch Knights, these mythic, fierce, and fiery knights, defenders of Ulster, and she appeals to them. She says, you're all born of women. You all have mothers. For God's sake, have mercy on me. Well, nothing changes, and she knows that if she doesn't run the race, her husband is going to be killed, and so she does run. And she runs, and she runs, and she wins, and it destroys her. And there are various accounts of this. By the way, if you like the sound of this story and you would like to hear somebody really tell this story in detail, on the blog I have included a couple of links to some storytellers' accounts of this story, and they will do a far better job of it than I am here. But in any case, as she's lying, giving birth, dying essentially, she's screaming. She gives birth to twins. In at least one account of the story, the twins are actually dead. She curses everybody present as she's screaming. And her curse is that anybody who hears her in their time when they need their greatest strength, they will be weak. And in fact, as the legend goes, this curse was a curse that befell the Red Branch Knights, and it was a curse that lasted for 9 generations. Well, why am I telling you this story? Oh, by the way, just a little trivia, to borrow a term from a completely different culture. This story of Macha, she does reveal her name as she's dying. Her name is Macha. It's actually where we get the place name today, Armagh. Armagh comes from Ard Macha, which means hill of Macha. And there are a number of accounts of fertility warrior goddesses, and she's one of them. Anyway, why am I saying this? Well, obviously, this is a story about people acting from fear, not being in alignment with their true calling and their true character. Both Kruniak and Macha act in fear in this story, and Macha's fertility turns to anger, it turns to war because of fear. And we know that that's what happens in our world when people operate from the energy of fear. We know that there are dire consequences. That's what fear does in our world. And fear has dire consequences in our nervous system as well. So we want to notice anytime that is the energy that's propelling us forward in our day. And in fact, I want to end on a note of asking you a question, and it's this. When was the last time that you actually just allowed yourself to trust and take a break and reflect on your life and reflect on what truly matters to you and reflect on any area in your life that is just feeling like it's coming from push energy and not flow energy, coming from fear and not love? And would it be all right with you to be the person who created results that you absolutely loved? That's the question I invite you to hold in your heart. Knowing that when we give ourselves permission to actually be, do, and have everything we came to be and experience here in our lives, when we give ourselves permission, that's a high act of trust. Trust is something that has to be built, and that is something that I help people with for sure. That level of trust and that level of alignment and expansive expression is also a high act of love, and that's what I wish for you. If you would like some help with that, if you would be interested in finding out about having some coaching with that, let me know. Get in touch with me. To your beautiful gifts. Bye for now.